Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. What? Good evening. That's better. Edward Drummond Libby and Florence Scott Libby taught the people of Toledo and elsewhere, by example, how to create a temple of beauty, and all the methods by which this beauty could be used to attract the public at large to this great forum. And I think we all agree that seldom has a city been blessed with such idealism. The idealism of great citizens like the Libbys, who by their constant thought and generous benefactions helped this institution grow as a great temple of beauty. But beyond this, early on, they made it a place for the thronging feet of countless children. And therein lies the real permanency, because those children are now adults, and now we have more children. I've been in on Saturdays over recent months, and there are hundreds of children here on Saturdays, and they still come. Mr. Libby said, "We owe it to ourselves and to the school children of Toledo and to the future generations to see our good work shall continue, that we lay a foundation so solid and complete that the future citizens of Toledo will look back upon this, our pioneer work, with praise and appreciation." And the great early director of this institution, and the ninth, George Stevens, said in 1926, 7 years before this great peristyle opened, at the dedication of the expansion of this building, he said, "This building is dedicated to the cult of the highest and the most beautiful things in life, to the guidance of the old and of the young, into the paths of true culture, and above all, to the eternal memory of Edward Drummond Libby and Florence Scott Libby, to whose ideals its conception was due, and of whose unselfish dreams for the uplift of their fellow citizens, it is the glorious realization." Every time I'm here with you in the Peristyle, I cherish those thoughts, because this is indeed an extraordinarily beautiful place. And I'm thrilled tonight to thank the group known as the Toledo Museum of Art Ambassadors for giving an opportunity for this Peristyle to come alive in a new way by sponsoring the Masters series that brings Jaume Plensa here tonight. So I want to thank the current president, Cindy Rimmelin, Susan Cruz, the incoming president, Elizabeth Emmert, the past president, and all the past presidents, and invite all the ambassadors here present to stand up so we can give you a round of applause. Please do. We have received another wonderful sculpture to our campus, to our sculpture garden, one that extends out to the junction of Monroe and Collingwood in the most magnificent way. And it has been enabled for us by a great gallerist, art dealer, lover of art, lover of people who work in museums, lover of artists, Mary Sabatino. There she is, Mary. Jaume and many other great artists work with Gary Lalonde, and that means they work with people like Mary. So it's a tribute to that great sense of responsibility, which to make sure that great art gets placed in great places. And enabling that here for us was George Jones, who's just here with Kathy, who's had such a long involvement with this institution. And his mother gave a work to the museum, which we hadn't accessioned, but it was an important work, which we were able to sell and use the receipts of that by exchange to help to buy Plensa's work. And the major funding for this incredible piece of sculpture, these are great works, was given by a real angel of the Toledo Museum of Art, somebody totally in the spirit of the Libbies, and that's Rita Kern, who's just here. To have such friends is extraordinary. And to work with great people is extraordinary. And I don't want to let the moment pass in front of you all, but to say that it was a great pleasure to be among some men and hundreds of women today at lunchtime at the Milestones Award, and have one of the honorees, the one for the arts this year, be Carolyn Putney. So we work with great people. Amy Gilman is our Associate Director and our Curator of Modern and Contemporary Art. And she was named Associate Director in January 2011 by me. And she now looks after the content and engagement side of the museum the way that Carol Bince looks after the resources side so well. And she's been helping in so many ways to facilitate implementation of a plan that the board of the museum, under the leadership of Deke Wells, and the board members are all present, and Deke, thank you so much, discussed today. And it's exciting for the museum to think of a new future. Amy came to Toledo in 2005 as Curator of Modern Contemporary Art after receiving her doctorate at Case Western Reserve in art history. She's acquired a lot of important works for the museum, works by Paul Casmus, Elizabeth Catlett, the most significant work by Marisol, which looks so wonderful in the Wolf Gallery currently, and really has engaged to bring a wonderful work by Jaume Plensa to the Toledo Museum of Art campus. So I am delighted that in addition to her duties as the person responsible for the Glass Pavilion and Artist in Residence programs and our exhibition programs, Amy is doing such an incredible job bringing wonderful works. Can you please welcome Amy Gilman, who will introduce our distinguished artist tonight.
Thank you, Brian. That is absolutely lovely. It's always a privilege to be able to be up here to talk to you. I will not keep you very long. I know that really what you are all here to hear and talk is not with me. And I will get to introductions to our artist in just a moment. I do want to mention that I hope that many of you took advantage of the fact that the Museum Cafe has special menu on Master Series nights, and the museum stays open from 4 until 6 on Master Series nights. And often we use Master Series events as a way of introducing new works or newly installed things in the museum. And of course, what we're really here to celebrate tonight is an incredible new acquisition, which I am sure all of you have seen at the corner of Collingwood and Monroe. But I also want to encourage you, as you leave tonight, the museum will stay open for a little bit, to go through the Classic Court and into the real sort of beginning of rethinking the installation of the entire East Wing, and not just the beginning, it's really well on its way. If you haven't been into the newly installed Wolf Gallery for Contemporary Art, I encourage you to do that. We have wonderful new acquisitions in there. And you'll see a brand new way of looking at Gallery 1, and a real collaboration amongst the curators, led by Carolyn Putney and our new Mellon Fellow, Adam Levine, to create an installation in galleries, well, 4, 5, and 9, which probably don't have any meaning to you all. And if you look at the plans, they don't even make logical sense anymore, but we can't renumber them because then we have to change the plans with the city. So they are forever to be 4, 5, and 9. So 4, 5, and 9 has an installation in 3 galleries that is really about introducing concepts of visual literacy through sculptures from all over the museum's collection, and interpreted and installed in ways that we have not done before. And I encourage you to go through there, to come back, to think about it, to give us some feedback, because this is an experiment for us. So I encourage you to do that now or later, next time you come back to the museum. I want to tell you just a short part of the story of this acquisition, because it didn't start as an acquisition. It started when Jaume Plensa had a project at Madison Square Park in New York, which is a venue for single standalone projects for contemporary artists. And it was this amazing sculpture, single head of a woman. And at the time that was wrapping up, Mary Sabatino, who Brian mentioned, had contacted, I'm sure, a number of people, but including Brian, to see whether or not we might be interested in taking that work on loan. And I had been familiar with Plensa's work, had seen a large exhibition that took place at the Meyer Sculpture Garden in Grand Rapids, and of course the wonderful fountain in Chicago. And so we immediately were completely engaged with this idea. And it turned out that that work wasn't going to work, it wasn't the right thing, but we started talking to Mary about what were some of the alternatives, and we really engaged with her about what would be the right piece to come here on a loan, with the intention of kind of seeing, would this really work for us? Would this be a good acquisition for the museum? And this one spoke to us immediately. It's so related to what we at the museum are all about: dialogue, visual literacy, engaging with our community. And I knew immediately the general area of the campus that it needed to be on. We agreed originally to bring the work here on loan, and Jaume Plensa arrived here at the museum in July for a very brief visit. I think he was here for 5 hours, maybe less, from where he was in Chicago, and worked with us on citing the piece. And it was really at this moment where the acquisition basically started to come together, because it was really clear immediately that this was a great work for us. So I want to play you a little video which gives you a little behind the scenes of what it was like to install this work, because outdoor sculpture is, well, complicated.
In October 2012, the TMA took delivery of the sculpture Spiegle, German for mirror, by the Spanish sculptor Jaume Plensa. This monumental piece consists of two crouching, abstracted figures facing one another. Created in 2010, it is made of white-painted stainless steel latticework consisting of individual letters from 8 different alphabets welded together. The different international alphabets are used to define and visually unite two seated individuals that are bound together in a silent exchange. The sculpture was showcased in 2011 in an exhibition of the artist's work in the United Kingdom. The sculptures were placed at the entrance to the museum's campus at the intersection of Monroe Street and Collingwood Boulevard. They serve as a fitting symbol for the museum, which has teaching visual literacy as one of its strategic goals. Likewise, the sculpture shows two figures in apparent dialogue, much as the museum hopes to bring visitors into dialogue with works of art. As you can imagine, installing two sculptures that are slightly over 12 feet tall and weigh just under 1 ton each is more of a project than putting out lawn ornaments. Metal sculptures on this scale resemble buildings in many ways, and like buildings, they require a concrete foundation. Also, since the statues will be lit from within at night, an underground electrical line needed to be installed. Museum staff and local contractors work with Methods and Materials Incorporated, a fine arts installation and rigging firm based in Chicago. The company has installed other sculptures by Plensa all over the world. The figures arrived partly disassembled. The first task was to remove the parts from the truck. That required a mobile crane. First, the heads were removed and placed temporarily to the side. Then the first torso was placed in its approximate final location. And its head was put in place and bolted on. The same was done with the other figure. At this point, there was discussion about final placement by Claude Fixler, the museum's exhibit designer, Amy Gilman, the associate director and curator of modern contemporary art, and Brian Kennedy, the museum's director. There are no second chances with sculpture as big as this. Once the positions had been determined and marked, the statues were put to one side and the trench for the concrete pad was dug. At the same time, a trench was dug for the electrical line. After the concrete had been poured and allowed to fully cure, the sculptures were brought back for final installation. This again is no easy task. The sculptures have to be put in their final positions and the locations of the anchors marked. The sculptures were again removed and holes for the anchors drilled. Finally, the sculptures were returned and permanently affixed to the concrete pad. The sculptures are now in place and can be enjoyed by museum visitors and commuters on Monroe Street.
So there you have it, the complicated nature of installing large outdoor sculptures. I just want to say that I want to give a small shout out to Mr. McDonald, who was one of the many people who sent Brian a letter or any kind of correspondence very shortly after this work was installed at the museum, asking in a very brief note that he really hoped that the museum would consider acquiring the work. And Mr. McDonald, if you're here, I can tell you that we heard you and we completely agree, and we have two wonderful donors to thank for making this possible. And what can I say about Mr. Plensa? He is world-renowned. His projects occur globally, but he is also very, very focused on the particulars and the personal. And when he came to cite this work, he was very clear that he wanted it to be closer to street level than we had originally envisioned it. We had thought it would be sort of at the top of the little rise there. And he wanted it in front of those trees. He wanted it closer to the people of the community where you would feel more connected to it. And I believe that the response that has happened, even in the short period it has been here, has proven him absolutely correct. And please join me in welcoming to the stage Jaume Plensa.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Brian, and special thanks to Ms. Rita, who did that dream possible. Thank you. Well, I'm a little bit worried because I had not any idea it was this video before, and I guess it's much better than my lecture. I hope to do my best. Well, that was the shot that I got from Toledo after the installation. Today it was the first day that I really seen the piece installed, and I'm extremely proud. I guess the museum did something that I guess is one of the dreams for me, to expand the boundaries of the institution into the city. I guess a museum is not an isolated island which is living separate of the community, and I guess they took a fantastic decision to really expand the museum into that beautiful corner. Spiegle is a piece that I did a couple of years ago for my show in Yorkshire Sculpture Park in the north of England, and that was the place where I displayed first that piece. And it's one of the pieces that I love because it's talking about duality. It's this idea that you in front of the mirror. Probably all of you has the same experience every day when you are in front of a mirror, trying to catch what's happened the time in your body. You are evolving, you are changing. I got a lot of new fans in Yorkshire. Oh, sorry, wait a second. And the idea of duality is pretty important because it's one of the fundamental subjects in my work, the idea of body and soul. the idea of you, yourself, and your shadow, the idea of the double image in the mirror. The title of that piece, which is a Spiegle, which in German means mirror, is a little bit the metaphor about the main part of my work. I choose other images of other similar pieces, or pieces that they are part of the same family. That one which is nomad, which is installed in Antibes, which is a beautiful city in the Côte d'Azur in France, and is also facing the sea. In the evening, somebody mentioned before that the pieces are illuminated from inside. That is a very important part of my work. I guess probably you can consider it's a romantic attitude, but I guess art should illuminate life. And I'm resisting that the spots are illuminating the pieces. I guess the pieces should illuminate the space around. And when the pieces are surrounded by people, it seems that they are complete. In the piece in Toledo, I've been using 8 alphabets. It's not something to clarify nothing, but it's just a metaphor about diversity. In that case, I've been using Hebrew, Arabic, Japanese, Chinese, Hindi, Greek, Russian, and Latin letters. And could be others, but I guess it was enough just to show to the world how beautiful we are together. We are together with our origins, with our special personality, with our dreams, with our ideas. And when we are together, we don't need to lose nothing in the way. We have a lot of information to exchange. And all those pieces that they are creating dialogues between are just a metaphor about community. It seems that the single letter alone means nothing, A, B, C, but together they build up words, and words with words, text with text, culture, etc. A single person seems nothing, but together with others they could build up a community, another community, a city. Well, I guess from the smaller to the greatest. I think it's one of my permanent ideas behind my work. That is another piece at your Spiegle Park that people could really penetrate. It's Spiegle. I don't know if you visit already the piece, but you can walk inside. I guess that is very beautiful because the piece becomes a shelter. It's the same as our body. When we fall in love, it seems that the other person just comes inside ourselves. And this idea of symbiosis, this idea that we can merge both, I think it's beautiful. And I'm inviting normally visitors to really walk through. That is another piece that it was in Chatsworth in England, in Vancouver, different places in Prague. You can say why he's taking always the photos from the backside. Well, I love this idea that the piece is facing something, as we normally do. This idea that the landscape is as important as the piece, I think is very, very, well, it's fundamental in my work. This idea to penetrate really the landscape around. I guess a sculpture is not important alone as for itself. I think it's important in relationship with the other things around. That is a piece that I installed a couple of years ago at the MIT in Boston, is the entrance. And it's one of the, well, my pleasure with that piece is because a lot of families, when it's visiting the students, they take the shots there in the piece. I think it's very beautiful because the piece becomes something more than only one sculpture. It's the piece, it's a place where they could keep memories. That is a piece that I installed recently at Place Vendôme in Paris. It was, you see, an installation of 3 pieces. It was a piece that for the collection in Istanbul. The piece is already there in Turkey. But it was fantastic for 1 month to have this experience to install some, let's say, pieces from my studio in a place that's so well known as Place Vendôme in Paris. And playing with the memory of that site. You see that this piece was made with notes, and musical notes, and my surprise was where I installed the piece just in front. It was where Chopin died. He was living for 40 years, and that he died in one of the apartments, and he had not any idea. People thought I did the piece in function of that, but it's not. It was a piece that I did in the studio. And sometimes this kind of accidents makes my life so interesting. That is another piece with music, silent music, that is in Chicago, and that is another piece with music that I installed in Cremona, in the entrance of a museum about the violin. As you know, in Cremona it was all these fantastic violin makers, and they did a museum, and they asked me a piece about that. Another piece that it was in Miami, which right now is in Des Moines, installed permanently over there. Okay, and that is when you are inside and you are looking out of the piece, that it was in Miami. Well, this idea that the piece is a little bit like a roof, it's a part of the project that I did in this beautiful island in Japan, Ogishima, where I did a kind of little pavilion to welcome visitors in. Ogishima is a very tiny little island in the south of Tokyo, in a beautiful city called Katamatsu, and they have a beautiful inland sea called Seto. They have, I don't know, 70 islands, 77 islands, I don't know. They have many islands. And I like it to imagine my piece as an island in the island. You see the little pavilion is surrounded by water, and visitors are invited to penetrate from both sides of the installation. The roof is made also with alphabets as a Spiegle, and it's beautiful, the shades that they create, the shadows on the ground on a sunny day. You see from the town the piece with the other islands in front. And the concept of the piece is pretty simple. I was trying to imagine what is for me the idea of home. And I guess a home, well, the perfect home is an oyster that you can close on yourself. And I finally did that idea. The roof is like one part of the oyster, and the other part is virtual. It's the reflection of that roof in the water. You can see both sides, and here you probably would understand better. That it's me trying to work inside my home, let's say. That is the oyster. And 2 weeks ago, it was the Japanese curator with whom I've been working in that project, who came to Barcelona to visit me. And he said, Jaume, we are so surprised because that little place becomes one of the most desired places for couples to marry it. It's a long list of people waiting to make the wedding. And, well, I think it's great. It's really alive. The shades are also part of another family of my work, which is this kind of curtains. Let's say curtains. I love poetry. Since always, I learn a lot from poets, and trying to imagine what is poetry in my life. I always consider that poetry is something that protects me. It's a kind of, well, you know, in my tradition, in the Mediterranean tradition, the door of many stores were covered with a curtain, with metal pieces that you should open and pass through to avoid flies and mosquitoes inside the stores. And I liked the sound of when I was a child playing with the curtain, cling, 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 cling. It was beautiful, going with my mother to the stores. And you can see this guy passing through. And then I decided to do curtains with poetry, with the poets that I consider a little bit the legs of my table. And you can read in vertical. And when you decide to pass through, I guess it's an amazing decision, because you are passing through poetry. Life is completely another. And for example, at Le Long Gallery in New York, we did a large installation with curtains, but in a certain way, like a cloud, let's say. And it was beautiful to see all the people, surrounded by letters. People become part of the poetry as well. You see this guy waiting was one more of the letters. or at the National Sculpture Center in Dallas when I did the exhibition, we cut the space into two, thanks to this long curtain, which was about, I don't remember exactly, but I guess 17,000 letters, with a mix of 29 poems from my preferred poets. You see people were reading in a kind of meditative attitude, which I think is great. That was in Georgia as well. You see how beautiful it is when somebody's passing through. Well, that you probably know, everybody knows that piece right now. And the Crown Fountain was also part of that concept. How to represent the idea of a community. Well, I've been talking about alphabets, about letters, about words, but also about bricks. This idea that one brick on top of another build up a house, build up a building. That means with a very simple element, you can construct something more complex. And this idea of transparent houses inhabited by people, I guess that is really the sense of a city. Many times when we see images of one town, you see only architecture. Of course it's important, architecture, but for me it's much more important people. And the Crown Fountain in Chicago was my desire to make an homage, let's say, to the anonymous people building a city. We were filming 1,000 people, 1,000 faces. We did an office, and we spent a lot of time trying to collect the most diverse mosaic of people living in town. And then we just filmed the faces. Is a huge computer in the basement of that piece, which is sending random images to the screens, which is LED screens, inside both towers. Well, it was a very strange piece for me because I've been trying to mix a lot of elements. You can imagine for the city it was a little bit complicated to accept me the project because it was to mix electricity, water, the possibility that people was walking on the water, and finally all the techniques just gone, because probably it's one of the most simplest pieces I never did in my life, and probably the most physical one. I still remember when we finished the project, waiting the day after for unveil the piece. It was a fence closing the piece around, and with my technicians we decided to take the fence off. It was in the evening, I don't remember the time, but a lot of kids immediately arrived to play with. And it was a surprise because I never thought that that piece was something that kids could appreciate. And because many people in town said, well, Jaume, that piece is too complicated and too sophisticated, too technology, too much, that nobody will understand. Okay, in 2 seconds the piece has been part of the everyday life of them and becomes a plaza, a gathering place, a place where people could meet and enjoy, especially because, as you can see, it's this rectangle of water. I mentioned it many times that I was born in the Mediterranean area, in Barcelona, but I could not swim, I don't float at all, I'm too heavy. And that was a shame for my mother, and she'd bring me to so many swimming pools and schools to try to see if her son was floating, and impossible. And maybe that is the reason that I love so much water, because one day I've been in the Dead Sea and I was swimming. That means that my mother was completely wrong. She never took me to the right sea. That means I was keeping always in my mind that possibility one day to do that homage to the water. And in Chicago, it was the right possibility. And I did this reflecting pool, which is only very thin. I guess it's 1/8 of an inch thick, that people could walk on. And it was fantastic because you see the edge, people walk, but when they decide really to walk inside the pool, they start to smile. It seems that something happens. And it's a kind of stage, like a theater. You are in or out, and that it's a little bit similar. And kids are my main supporters in town now, because they know the way to control the rhythm of the piece. Because I transform those kind of anonymous people in the city in gargoyles, these kind of beautiful images that I don't know why disappear completely in our society, which was this kind of faces, a little bit monsters that spouting water from their mouth in cathedrals, in old houses. And I like it to return this idea. We are the people, we are the godness, we are. Because if you walk in Rome, you can see many beautiful fountains with, I don't know, the four rivers, or with divinities, big people. No, we are the godness, we are the people, we are really the most important substance of the city. And kids are looking at it, they are just enjoying this kind of amazing possibility. Well, you know, our body is composed mostly by water, and probably that is the reason that attracts so much the people when they could really be part of. And that's a beautiful shot. And okay, in the evening, in summer, well, you know, Chicago is a pretty cold city, and my design has been thinking a lot what's happening in winter. And in winter, the water disappeared completely, and it's only the images running in both the screens. And you have the feeling that is a garden in winter, when it's waiting the spring. And I'm very pleased because that idea really happens, because every spring the newspaper in Chicago says something like that. The Crown Fountain is working. It means the spring is right. And I think it's just fantastic. Okay, besides all those pieces, I did others. And like this one that I did in the roof of the BBC Broadcasting House in London a long time ago. And it was like this idea just to announce that we exist. And it's a piece that it has a light beam coming up from inside the cone shape, where I engrave a text that I did about silence. You know, the BBC is a fantastic company in radio, and well, you can listen BBC all around the world. And I like it. When I was living in Berlin, I remember that was the radio that I was listening permanently. And it was the news at 9:30 every night, and it's when the light being lit. It was, well, part of my memories. I did that kind of light. Well, that is a beautiful view of this Westminster with the piece. And that is another piece that I did even before in Jerusalem, which I did this kind of place where people could sit around, and the light becomes like the fire that could really warm up, and it's in front of the wall, and it's also lit in the end of the Sabbath, because in Jerusalem is a sound announcing the beginning of the Sabbath, but not there. And that light, it's just very subtle announcing the end. That is a similar piece also that I did in the north of England years ago as well, to announce the beginning of a new museum called Baltic in Gateshead. It's near Newcastle. And the concept of those lights in that time, today many other people are doing lights like that, but when I did the fairs, people was a little bit doubting about what is the function of that light. For me, the light was like a bridge. Many times I said, well, it's a bridge, a transparent bridge that appear and disappear, a bridge that connects the earth with heaven, something, or if it was William Blake talking about, he said, hell and heaven. But I guess it's our materiality and our dreams. I always liked this idea of duality. We are talking about the Spiegle again, earth and heaven. That piece is a little bit the same like the Spiegle in another shape. You see that it's clear when the water is reflecting the light beam down. It's, well, I suppose William Blake is so happy if he could see the piece from the paradise and seeing how deep you can go to reach the hell and how tall you can go to reach the heaven. But it's finally nothing. It's just a transparent bridge. It's probably just a dream. Another part of my work is also with sound, but more than sound, it's more with the vibration of the material. All of us has a sound. I remember I did several pieces recording the sound of my blood stream, because it's probably one of the most beautiful things that you can show to your kids, how your body sounds. And I've been using this kind of gongs and cymbals just to talk about the vibration of the materials. I mentioned it before, William Blake, and if you know his poetry, he said, one thought feels immensity. That idea that our thoughts as vibrations are expanding and filling up the space like the sound of an object. When you beat the gong, boom, the sound expands and fills up the space. Not with objects, but with energy. I guess all of us have this kind of aura, this energy expanding, and that is the reason that two persons could become friends or lovers, whatever, because, I don't know, the sound probably is similar. And visitors are allowed to touch and to beat the gong with the mallet and producing this fantastic sound. And it's a very similar experience like in the Crown Fountain, because they beat the gong and start to smile again. That is with the cymbals and you see probably the droplet falling down and beating the cymbal when the dropping, and makes a beautiful symphony of sound. Every 8-10 seconds a drop is falling down, bing, bing, bing. And every cymbal has some poetry etched on top, and it changes the sound of the cymbal. When you are eating metal, the cymbal changes sound, and it's extremely beautiful. That is a project that I did at the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. You probably know it's the tallest building right now in the world. I don't know how many meters, it's huge. And they asked me to do a piece for the entrance lobby. And I immediately thought that it was probably beautiful to talk about the countries, the different origins. And I installed 196 cymbals with droplets falling down and making the sound of every country. It's a very subtle piece. I've been very happy because recently Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise is passing through. I was very happy. Unfortunately too fast and the piece is not so visible, but I guess it's the best part of the movie. Look at how beautiful. Well, all those symbols are not only touching the water, but also reflecting the light coming from the roof and expanding this kind of golden light all around. I don't know if you know the desert, but the desert has this beautiful golden light sometimes. And I tried also to catch in my piece this feeling. Water again, droplets, okay. The circle, it's another thing very important in my work, like this circle that I did with the snow. In collaboration with Norman Foster, we did that piece at the Italian Alps in Spiegle. And I remember when I was thinking the project, my intention was to try to represent a portrait of the landscape. And I decided to use the GPS numbers as poetry, as a musical notes, with the exactly geographic situation of the Norman's studio in London, my studio in Barcelona, and the site in Italy. And that is the three groups of numbers. And I guess it was a beautiful piece that, I don't know, it disappeared in 1 week. It was melting. I remember Foster, which is a great architect, was completely upset because the piece was melting. He said, we have to invent something to fix the snow forever. I said, but I think this is much beautiful. Just let the piece done the right way. You see that all the numbers, and in the evening was really beautiful, because it was like a stamp on the landscape. It was a very beautiful piece. That is another family in my work, this kind of fat angels. I always talk about them as fat angels. Angels that could not fly and they get stick on the walls, which I guess it represents pretty well our life. We try to be fantastic, but we are plenty of defaults. But even with our limits, we have the capacity to illuminate life. I guess that is key. And I like to build up this kind of fat figures. You see these kind of angels going out from the walls with inscriptions, and trying to illuminate the space. That, for example, in different places in the wall, that was in Yorkshire again, within this beautiful position, speak no evil, hear no evil, sin no evil, which sometimes I guess is a misunderstanding, because it seems that that position means that they don't take decisions. But I love when you take in the other sense. Sometimes words don't let us to express properly our ideas. Sometimes ears don't listen properly the right sounds. And sometimes our eyes are not the best way to look at the things around. And I like that position, because many times we don't use our body in the right way. We have to use more our heart, our vibrations. And that is a little bit that idea, that they are not really trying to listen. They are concentrating themselves. Many part of my work is talking about the idea. Of course, the exterior, let's say the wall is great, but what's happening inside ourselves? Okay, that is a similar work, but on top of poles. That is a work that I'm doing pretty often. I like this idea that you are apart, that people are walking, and we are like birds looking reality from above. And I think that it's a terrific idea, because also when people are walking, look at this, some more ships all around, and they really should look it up. And I guess it's great, because in our life we are always looking down, down, down. And suddenly you find something, you should look it up. And it's a fantastic excuse to look at the sky again. And those pieces are installed in different parts of the world. That is one installation that I did recently in Germany. Or in the National Sculpture Center, that kept one in both sides of the building. Beautiful building. Or a conversation that I did in Nice, in France as well. You probably understood in the pictures that the figures are changing colors in a very gentle way, like a dialogue. Suddenly they are red, another is yellow, another is green. It's a little bit the same that we are all together, that we never agree. And one is yellow, another is red, another is green. But suddenly, sometimes, boom, all are white or all black, and that is the beauty of colors, talking about the idea of language as well. Or in the opposite, if here the figures were in the top, here the figures are in the ground. That is my self-portrait 7 times with the names of musicians covering my body. Musicians, composers, music composers that I like very much. My father was playing piano many times at home, and I remember when I was a child, I was hidden myself inside the piano. It was an upright piano, vertical, and with 2 sliding doors at the bottom, and when it was some stored at home, I just hidden inside. And I remember that sometimes my father was playing piano, and he didn't know that I was in. And it was beautiful, because, as you know, the harp is a triangle shape, and it's in the right side is the room enough for a little kid. And I never forgot this vibration, the vibration of the instrument, you and the music becomes as one. Probably that is the reason I love music, and I collaborate in many opera projects. I like very much that combination. That piece is coming from that idea. Music composers covering my body, like my father's piano covering at that time myself. But here I took the link with a very old tradition in alchemy, which was from the dead body a new life comes up. And that means from the mineral, from the earth, a new life is coming up, like a tree, they said, and the trunk is a bridge, and the branches embrace the cosmos. That was the idea of the alchemist. Well, that is a beautiful shot with the snow. It was fantastic. You see, and it's myself embracing the tree, and this tree, it's coming up from the bronze piece, which is cast. That means a definitive material, let's say. My body is kept in one specific size, a specific weight, a specific volume. I could not change anymore. But the main question for me is always, and where is my soul going? Because I'm continuous to get experiences. My life expands. My body keeps at the same size. It's incredible. Where all the memories are going, where I keep all this information, this amazing information. And well, I thought that probably our soul, or our ideas, or our memories is like a tree that continues to grow up out of us. It's a kind of expanding, invisible expansion of our energy. And this tree, well, that is a piece that it remains permanently in a little square in Germany, very beautiful. I installed the piece in 2007. Well, I don't know how big the tree is today, because I'm very limited in that shape. That means that the trunk continues to grow up. And I don't know, I'm really curious in 20 years to see what happens with that tree. That other pieces that I install also in Japan, in front of the water. And I remember a collector in Germany when they called me, Jaume, you should come, because he bought one of my pieces. And in the end, in the backyard of his home, and has a beautiful garden with 3 identical trees. And he installed my piece in the central tree. And 2 years later, the tree was double sized than the other 2. And I got the same experience in my house, because to be sure that everything was working, I installed a tree with one of the figures in my garden. And believe me that the tree is bigger than the rest of the garden. And I've been talking with, I don't know, gardeners and biologists and people. I said to try to understand why the tree is growing up faster and better. And they said, no, because you are protecting, I don't know, this or that. And they give me a lot of technical reasons, but I'm convinced that it's just love. Because the tree is always embraced by love, and with love everything is possible. Okay, that is another family again. I always thought that the most important part of our body is the head. The head, why? Because we have the main sense, the eyes, ears, mouth, nose, everything in our head, but especially the brain. I'm completely passionate with my brain. I guess it's an amazing laboratory. An amazing laboratory completely out of control. It seems a paradox, but if 2 ideas wants to meet in one of our dark corners in the brain, they will meet even if you don't like it. And how to control our brain? When they said, no, this guy is very strong brain. I mean, it's completely out of control, completely. But that is the beauty. And especially, I guess the brain is the home of our dreams. And I guess it's key to dream. And that, it's the first piece that I did in the way to try to transform the 3D mesh that I'm working normally in the computer with my team to really catch the volume of my pieces into reality. those lines that they are normally floating in the screen in blue color. Those lines. Let's pass the lines into reality. You should remember that I'm from the Mediterranean area, and in that place, the eyes are in our fingers. We need to touch, we need to caress, we have to touch. And a computer for me, it's a fantastic tool, but I'm always touching the screen and say, don't touch the screen. But you know, the idea to penetrate inside, and that it's much easier to make the piece than to pass the hand through the screen. That means I did the piece. And that is in Chicago and other places, and to keep the transparency, to understand the shape of our head inside, not only outside. You know, I think it's beautiful because you can follow exactly the shape that is in Dallas. You see, it's pretty beautiful to see the two ears in both sides, or to understand the hair or the place. This kind of, but seeing permanently the landscape around, and that is in Yorkshire. I guess it was a great installation because the English landscape is very beautiful in that area, and for me it was very important in that show to try to dialogue with my Mediterranean tradition with that fantastic English landscape. And that is a piece that I recently finished in Calgary. It's a very tall piece. People are allowed to walk inside. You can probably see the size of a man. And here is two entrances in both sides of the head that allow people to walk in, which is another dream. That means to really to visit the right place of our dreams. And when you are inside, you can see through the sky with the eyes, the negative part of the face. You see that I think this shot is fantastic. And you can see downtown Calgary and the sky. You can be in the piece. I think it's beautiful. It's not still unveiled. It's I guess in next summer. It's too much snow in that moment. That was a beautiful installation at Lelong Gallery in New York with my heads. With completely covered by marble pebbles. Those three heads were trying to make a silent conversation, and they have some words right etched on the face, which are coming from a beautiful letter that Oscar Wilde sent from the prison of Reading to the authorities, mentioning what for him was the three main problems in prison. He said it was hunger, disease, and insomnia. And if you think a little bit more about it, it's probably true that it's the main things in life, not in prison, in life. Hunger, disease, and insomnia. And I like this idea of three graces talking in a silent conversation from these three words as well. This is a similar piece, but I did up in the north of Sweden, which is always covered by snow, or in alabaster. I'm working a lot portraits since I did my project in Chicago, the Crown Fountain. I enjoyed very much the portrait, the concept of to take somebody and make a portrait. In Chicago I did that with video, but I decided to continue that idea, but in a more classical material like alabaster, marble. I'm also working now with wood, and but only with girls. Very young girls in between 8, 13, 14 years old, which is this beautiful age that they are not anymore a child, but she's not still a woman. This moment that they are nothing, but everything. And I guess it's a beautiful metaphor about future. I guess future is female. A man, it's important, but relatively. But the woman, it's really the memory and the future. We helped a little bit to link both sides, but we disappear. But female, it's there. And those heads, you see, this kind of groups of portraits. I guess since I did the Crown Fountain in 2004, which I finished, I have now around 21 portraits of girls that I repeat one one time and another time, because I'm using that portrait as base of work. And that was in long again. And a piece that is right now at the Cordova Park in Boston. Or a piece that I just finished for the Albrecht Knox Museum in Buffalo, which is the portrait of a girl called Laura. And you see, it's just beautiful because I don't know, I guess it's about 32 tons of marble. But it seems nothing, it seems so transparent, translucent. I'm working with marble in the same way that Romans were doing the columns for their temples, which is in slices. I'm using slices of marble and with a very thin sheet of lead in between that sticks perfectly the marble, although you probably see the lines, the lines. Okay. And that is a project that I did also a long time ago, well, 2009 already, in St. Helens, which is a little town near Liverpool, which was mainly mining, a mining town with a huge colliery that was cancelled by Margaret Thatcher 20 years ago. All the ex-miners, well, redo completely the economy and life is now is a very important city producing flat glass. But, well, they like to imagine to do a project in the place where the mine was before. And they asked me, it was an honor, honestly, to do a project there. And I did the head of this girl that I entitled The Dream. I still remember one day talking with the ex-miners and the help, well, it was also the help of the Liverpool Biennial, the curators of the Liverpool Biennial. But our meeting place was a pub nearby. And the ex-miners one day told me, Jaume, you can imagine how dark is the pit when you are inside 300 meters down. The light is, well, everything is so dark that the light becomes a dream. And that is the reason I titled it Dream, that project. And look at from the distance, it's really something hard to imagine. It's something in between a tale and Photoshop. You don't know exactly where they are. It's pretty beautiful when you are driving down from Manchester to Liverpool, the M69, and you can see the piece. But also, it's very beautiful when you are closer. And the piece has these two possibilities, to be close by or from the distance. And it's really a piece that became very celebrated because it's another possibility in art to regenerate completely one space. I guess the city now is pretty proud to know that they also has, let's say, a piece of beauty. Brian was talking about beauty, and I'm completely agree with him. I guess beauty is probably the most important part in our job. We have to introduce beauty in the everyday life of people. Well, that was the project that Amy mentioned before. It was at Madison Square Park in New York, and it was another girl. The one in St. Helens was Anna. This one was Nuria. Well, it looks like a divinity, a goddess there, but she's a beautiful girl, which is the daughter of the owner of the Chinese restaurant nearby my studio. And I asked her mother the possibility to took her as a model because she was absolutely beautiful. And well, that is the people surrounding the piece in the park, and thanks to that piece I'm here, I guess. And how beautiful it looks in the evening, you see. And okay, let me talk about that piece because I guess it's the piece that I did last year in Rio de Janeiro. It's an important piece for me because it's also a statement. It's not only a piece, it's a statement in the way that water, the idea of head, the idea of portrait, the eyes closed, the mouth closed, And I remember somebody in the beach asked me, but Jaume, surrounded by this amazing city, the Sugarloaf, and the other side is the Corcovado, how she has the eyes closed. It was the same question in St. Helens. I said, because for me it's pretty important to show people that the landscape, the city, our life is beautiful, but that we have to look in and to try to show to others the extraordinary beauty that we keep hidden inside ourselves. We have to have the security to try to talk. Our ideas are as good as the others. I mean, sometimes information is so strong around us that we feel like ants, so small. No, no, no. We are the best in the cosmos. But that it's a little bit, that intention. She's concentrating her dreams in herself, even with this amazing landscape around. Because she probably don't need to look at that. She's breathing, she's feeling the space around. And I guess it was for me a fantastic experience to install really on the water. Not to fabricate the water as I did in Japan or I did in Chicago. That was the real ocean. And I remember when the curator who did the project with me asked me, where do you like to install your piece? Because I visit Rio, and it was so hard to find a place, but it was always in my mind, the water. And he said, well, in the water. I said, but in the water? He said, yes, I guess probably water is the best public space in the world, because it's a public space in motion. Probably that water the day before was touching States or touching France or touching I don't know which country. It's always in movement, water. You never could see twice the same water, the Greek philosopher says. Okay, I guess that is the real public space. And, well, I said, okay. And we spent months and months to try to get the right permissions to do it. And with the help of Mary as well. And we spent several nights on the beach trying to install this huge piece in the water, and with something that we can call, since that moment, the Brazilian miracle, which was I don't know, we had a huge crane with the head in the end holding there, but the level of water was changing because we were never in the right moment to drop down the piece in the right place. No, we have to wait until 10 o'clock in the morning. Okay, let's do it. No, we have to wait until 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay. And finally the water was almost touching the machine. And the driver, I was with the driver in the cabin to really try to catch the right position. And many people in both sides were with ropes trying to control the movement of the piece and the water was touching the machine, and the machine started to beep, 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 beep. It said, I could not hold the piece anymore. Boom! And he just dropped down the piece. And the piece fell down exactly in the right place, facing the right thing, in the right position. I mean, that means that before the lecture, somebody asked me, but Jaume, must be very complicated to deal with so heavy things. I said, no. I guess it's a beautiful piece, and it was for me a great experience. I mean, I guess every project is not only an art project, it's also a personal experience. Okay, that's it. I finished with the Spiegle. Thank you.